Stay home, stay safe, stay strong. We're all in this together.
Thanks for joining us on The Real Story. I'm Jen Bernstein. Our show today is focusing on higher education during the COVID-19 pandemic. What is it going to look like for students and faculty in the spring with graduation, during the summer, and even into the fall? We know the governor and the reopening committee talked about how that might look like last week. But I want to bring in Mark Ojakian. He is the president of the Connecticut State Colleges and Universities System. And Mark, you're actually on the Connecticut Reopening Committee, and you are a designated lead, you were saying, on higher education. There's so much to talk about. Where do we even start? How did you start on this committee when you were looking at plans?
The governor asked me to lead the state effort on the higher education component of this. We've been part of the governor's emergency response team throughout the COVID-19 pandemic. And now we will work and lead the effort to reopen, hopefully, summer, some classes, fall, hopefully many of our residential campuses, working with all public and independent institutions around the state of Connecticut.
And it's complicated because we have so many different types of institutions here in our state. And it sounds like the reopening committee, you all gave colleges and universities flexibility when it came to how they were going to plan for reopening and phasing in of returning to education, right?
Yeah, there's guidelines that institutions need to meet in order to be able to reopen. As you know, the reopening effort is being done in phases, similar to how the governor is trying to reopen the entire state of Connecticut. We have the ability, institution by institution, to craft our own plan that meet the minimum guidelines that have been set out. Now, the priority has always been and will continue to be the health and safety of our greater campus communities. And there's strict public health protocols that go along with this reopening effort. So assuming that the pandemic, the trajectory continues to go down, assuming that institutions develop plans that meet those public health guidelines, we can make assurances to students, faculty, staff, and students' families that we are safe to come back in the summer or in the fall, depending on what kind of institution you are. The other thing I will say is each institution is different, I think, as you pointed out. Whether you're a two-year community college or a four-year research institution, you have different kinds of students. Your demographics are different. You're located in different geographic areas. And so in some cases, you may have more testing that's required of students, and in some cases, just the minimum guidelines. So it's a very good plan. It was delivered by public health professionals working with higher education leaders. And I'm looking forward to working with my colleagues to see if we can reopen safely beginning in the summer.
How have online courses been this past spring? How would you say that transition has gone for students?
I think the transition has gone better than I would have anticipated, to be perfectly candid. Faculty has done an incredible job of transitioning their in-person instructional models to online. They had to do this in a very short period of time. You remember correctly, it was mostly over spring break that this transition occurred. And so faculty's done an incredible job. Students have transitioned well. They have supports on their campus virtually in terms of advising and guidance that has met all of the, I think, protocols that we had envisioned. Some students are having difficulties, but we did our best to get as many students as possible the devices that they needed to be able to go fully online. And we were able to work with our internet providers in Connecticut to put more hotspots in those areas where students didn't have internet service, and to really negotiate a package with all of our internet providers so that students who couldn't afford the internet but had the access, we paid for them to have that internet access. So it wasn't perfect, but I have to say I'm so proud of the students in my system who did an incredible job of transitioning. Our priority was to keep everybody healthy and safe and to provide them with the tools they needed to complete the spring semester.
So did you go and look in certain neighborhoods where you had a lot of students, or you knew different areas of the state that didn't have good cell phone service, and then went in and put those hotspots there? Is that how you did it?
Well, no, we worked with our internet providers who knew where those hotspots needed to be, and it wasn't only in urban centers, but it was in rural areas where access to the internet just is not the same as it is in more densely populated areas. So we worked with our internet providers, and instead of going institution by institution, we came together as a system and we negotiated a group deal, which the system paid for. So I was very proud of that effort.
Yeah, really interesting. Got to ask about the tech programs, manufacturing, which I know that some of the community colleges do have, because there's certain pieces of education that can easily be translated online. And manufacturing, anything like that is very difficult. So where are these students right now who were in courses this spring and need technical degrees or any of that for job experience or to get hired and to just get a degree in general?
That's a very good question. The instructional component was able to be transitioned online, but you're absolutely correct. You need that experience on the ground in order to be able to complete your certificate or your associate's degree. We are very hopeful that if the trajectory of the virus continues to decline, that we can open up some of these spaces in the summer so folks can complete. We're hopeful that many of our workforce programs, where there's social distancing already as part of the normal on the ground experience, we will be able to start in the summer. And I want to just highlight one other thing. Our manufacturing centers came to the rescue in a number of cases where they provided many of the PPE that was needed throughout the states. And through their 3D printers, they were able to make mask shields and other devices that area hospitals were very short on. So we continued to be not only educators to our students, but part of the community and the overall state response to the pandemic.
I can imagine, and that is certainly job experience right there a lot. I mean, I'm sure employers are going to look at that experience of helping and think that those are important skill sets for sure. Okay, so
Absolutely.
Tell me how enrollment is looking for the fall.
Well, we don't have the best sense right now of how it's looking. We are working with our universities to figure out what they anticipate in terms of enrollment. Our universities, of course, are residential, and the percentage of residential versus commuter varies by institution. I would imagine, even though we're doing a great marketing effort to reach the students of the state of Connecticut, that you may see some decline simply because you can't anticipate having fully occupied dorms in the fall. And I think that there will be still some anxiety by students and families about sending their child into a dorm, even though we will not reopen until it is extremely safe and healthy. At the community colleges, we're seeing, quite honestly, more folks looking at the two-year institutions as a viable alternative. Many folks in the state, as you know, have been unemployed. They've lost their jobs, and it's times at high unemployment that folks want to go back to school, learn a new skill, finish their education, and be able then to transition back into the job market. So we've received more than the normal amount of inquiries and applications for the community colleges. So I'm hopeful that we may see an enrollment increase, at the community colleges.
That is interesting. Do you think that the enrollment decline in the other parts of the colleges are going to create a budget problem for you?
There's no doubt that if enrollment declines, there will be a budget problem at the universities and for the entire system. As a result of having to close those residential campuses in the middle of March, we immediately pivoted to return dollars to students for room and board that they had paid for the entire semester. At the universities, that totaled over $26 million. So you can just imagine if we are lower than anticipated or expected occupancy in our dorms, that we will continue to see that financial decline. So we're very concerned that the direction that this pandemic took affected not only the health and safety of students, but also our financial situation. And we're not unique. You look around the country, everybody is having these financial challenges because the revenue that we are able to accrue by tuition and fees and room and board has declined.
Do you expect some help from the federal government? Is that something at some point that colleges and universities, you think, are going to rally together and ask for in another future stimulus bill?
Absolutely, we will ask for it. We've received in Connecticut, in my system, $54 million already as part of the CARES Act. Half of that needs to go to students who in the form of emergency financial assistance, and the other goes directly to institutions to help cover some of their COVID-19 related costs. The way, though, that the guidance has come down from the federal government, which actually reversed their initial guidance, makes it much more restrictive as to which students qualify for the emergency financial assistance. And we anticipate that the guidance as it's currently written will leave behind 30,000 students in the system. These are students from middle-class families. They may have lost their jobs. Their parents may have lost their jobs. And we think that this is not a fair way to distribute the money. So I recently sent a communication to Secretary DeVos asking her to immediately reconsider, because every student on our campuses was disadvantaged by this pandemic.
Did you hear back from her?
No, she didn't call me yet, but I'm actually not holding my breath. But we're working with our congressional delegation, who has been very supportive.
To get a response.
Our congressional delegation has been working with me every step of the way since this pandemic first hit our institutions, and I couldn't be, prouder to have them as elected leaders representing Connecticut. They've done a great job, not only in this area but in every other area that has been affected by the pandemic.
All right, well, you keep us updated on that. Mark Ojakian, thank you for joining us and dealing with the technical hurdles of trying to tape the real story virtually. We really appreciate it.
I'm a pro now, Jen, and thank you, and everybody please stay safe and healthy.
You as well. All right, we have more to come on The Real Story. UConn's president, Thomas Katsouleas, is going to join us right after the break, how he's thinking education will look for the rest of the spring, the summer, and the fall. We'll talk about it coming up.